Chapter 8, the information processing approach to learning. In Chapter 7, you remember we talked about classical and operant conditioning, and that's association between things. And then we also talked about the social cognitive approach, which is the interaction of social, behavioral, and cognitive factors to learning, right? This chapter, the information processing approach, is again very different from those two. And we're going to be looking at the components of what this approach entails. So this approach basically sees the brain like a computer, and that students, it's about how they're processing the information and encoding the information and retrieving it, all of those operations that they do, and how the brain changes in its ability to do that over time. So we're going to look at the nature of the information info processing approach. We're going to look at attention and memory, which are two major components of that. Then we're going to look at expertise and again at metacognition, which we look at at the end of most chapters. And I'm going to try to keep this video to about 20 to 25 minutes. So for now, this is part 1, and we'll see how that goes. The learning goals for this chapter. At the end of this chapter, students will be able to describe the information processing approach, characterize attention, and summarize how it changes during development, discuss memory in terms of encoding, storage, and retrieval, discuss some lessons about learning from the way experts think, and then finally explain the concept of metacognition and identify some ways to improve children's metacognition. All right, so first, the nature of the information processing approach. So what is it? This approach, like I said, it's sort of analogous to computers, right? Where you've got the brain, which is the hardware, you've got cognition, thoughts, expectations, memory, thinking, attention, all of those things are like computer programs, software, right? So it emphasizes that children manipulate information, monitor information, and strategize about information. Children develop a gradually increasing capacity for information processing, increasingly complex information, complex knowledge and skill. So as children grow up, their abilities within information processing get more and more complex, and they get faster and faster. Children are highly capable of manipulating information, monitoring information, and then strategizing ways of doing things for the next time they learn something based on what they learned this time. And that will all make sense as we go through. So let's look at cognitive resources, capacity, the speed of the information processing. So IP, I'm going to call it IP. IP abilities increase with age and experience. Those are the two pieces. Okay, so there's biological and then there's the experience. Biological developments occur in the different brain structures, right? So there's changes in the frontal lobes, blooming and pruning of connections between neurons that produce fewer but stronger connections. We talked about this in an earlier chapter where there's tons of neurons and they're all, stretched out across the frontal lobes. And then as children gain experience in the frontal lobe, those connections start to be pruned, right? So there's fewer connections, but they're more specified. So because there's fewer, they're stronger. Another biological change that affects the speed of IP is myelination of the axon of the neurons, right? So as children grow up and get older, there's more and more myelination, and as we know, myelination increases speed, the speed at which neurons can pass energy, right? Increase in capacity, hold more information of a topic, also improves processing speed. So when children are very young, they may only be able to hold 2 or 3, like 1 or 2 pieces of information in their head to think about at the same time. But as you get older, you're able to think about many different things at one time. And because you can do that, you can process things faster. I'm trying to think of an example here right off the bat. Like if you were, say, doing calculations for your home bills or whatever, right? Or your apartment rent. So you can hold in your mind, okay, cost of internet. You can hold in your mind cost of internet, cost of hydro, groceries, and list off, 8, 9, 10 different expenses that you may have. Some of them may interact with each other, but you could also be getting money from a room that you rented out, so you can include that. So you're able to hold all of these different pieces of information in your head to come up with a solution fast, and because you can come up with a solution faster. And I hope that makes sense. Okay, so what is the role of IP speed? I guess I gave this example already. How fast children process information influences what they can do with it. So adding a sum of groceries while remembering the individual prices of the items. Okay, that's a very simple one. IP speed is linked to competence in thinking. That makes sense, right? And high IP is linked to good performance on cognitive tasks. So the faster you can process information, the better you perform on cognitive tasks. So how do you measure IP? Typically, you have reaction time tests. They're the 2 basic ways of doing it. So for example, here's to push button when you see a stimulus, and it's just your reaction time, right? And then another one that's a little bit more complicated is you're matching letters or numbers with different symbols, right? There's an example in the text that they give here, but you can make it as complicated as you want, right? So you can have match numbers to blue triangles, match letters to red circles, and then they pop up randomly and they have to match them. And you could introduce a third, a fourth, whatever you want to do to increase the complexity of that. So the controversy, is the increase in IP speed due to experience, or is it due to biological maturation? And there is no answer, just like the nature-nurture debate. It will be due to both. What are the mechanisms of change? There's 3 mechanisms proposed by Siegler that work together to create changes in children's cognitive skills. So because of these 3, and then there's a 4th at the end there, but because of these main 3, changes in children's ability to do these 3 results in increased IP. Okay, so first is encoding, so getting information into the memory. Increased skills at encoding is relevant, ignoring the irrelevant. So when kids are very young, they see, how there's S if you print it, and then there's S in cursive. So when children are very young, they're going to encode that as 2 different pieces because they look different. And then as they get older, they're going to be able to ignore the fact that one is written and one is cursive because it really doesn't matter. They're both an S, right? So now that's 1 piece of information. So increased skills at encoding important information, that it's just an S, and ignoring irrelevant, who cares whether it's written or cursive. Automaticity, that is the ability to process information with little effort. Right? So as you get more and more experience with anything, your ability to process that increases. Reading, remember well, you probably don't remember learning to read, but when you see kids learning to read, and they're really stumbling through, sounding out words, sounding out, skipping where the period is or commas, they struggle and they work through. But as they gain more and more experience, they stop sounding out. They start noticing whole words at a time. Then they're able to blend things across an idea. You learn how to pause at commas. You don't even think about it now. That's called automaticity. You're reading something. You don't have to think about the words. You just know what they mean. And then strategy construction. This is the ability to discover and create new processing procedures and strategies. So as children grow up, they start to see strategies for making things easier, being creative in how they're learning. And this is something that naturally increases with experience and with age. This last one, self-modification, this is linked very closely to strategy construction. Self-modification is learning to use what they have learned in previous circumstances to adapt their responses to a new situation. So this all goes back to social constructivists, right? About children building on old knowledge, actively building on old knowledge and thinking of new and faster and better ways to bring in new knowledge. Okay? Another important aspect of the information processing approach and information processing, the act of doing that, is attention. So attention, your improved ability to attend to relevant things and ignore things that are not relevant increase your IP speed. The focusing of mental resources improves cognitive processing. You can't possibly attend to everything. At any one time, there's a ton of things going on. I'm looking at a screen by myself. I'm hearing my voice. There's a car honking out on the road. I'm expecting the front door to open at any time. I've got a meeting later. Like, there's lots of things that I can't possibly think of everything right now, right? So in order to improve your cognitive, let me just say that again. So in order to improve my ability to create this video and to be talking about this sort of thing, I have to focus and attend to only this, and I have to ignore the other stimuli. Okay, so this next section is about how you allocate attention. What are the different ways that you can allocate attention in order to focus on one, or if you have to focus on two, right? So here we have selective attention, and that's the ability to focus on one or some pieces of information and ignore others. So for me, it's my ability to focus on the content of this course and what I'm saying right now and the concepts that we're learning, and ignore others. I have to ignore the car honking, and I have to ignore the dog barking and all of those other things that are happening, right? The example given here, if you're speaking to somebody in a crowded room or at a party or something like that, I just thought of that because it's COVID. So anyways, your ability to focus on one person's voice. Okay. Divided attention, that's focusing on more than one thing at a time. It gives the example of music and studying. So if you are able to study while listening to music, that is an example of divided attention. Sustained attention, that is the ability to maintain attention over a long period of time, right? So when you're studying, sustained attention is what you are all doing at this time of year, right? You can pick up the chapter, you can read all 30, 40 pages and study for 3 hours, right? And then finally, executive attention. Sorry, I had to pause for a second. And then finally, executive attention. And what that is about is being able to work on many things at one time while having the ability to attend to each of them as you're going, right? So planning actions, monitoring progress, balance goals, for example, balancing all of your courses plus your work. Just being able to monitor progress on things, deal with problems as they come up, solve the problems, and then switch your attention to one of the other activities that you are working on. What are the developmental changes in attention? Children's attention span increases rapidly from ages from 5 to 10. So when children are very, very young, as you know, they they can't hold their attention for more than a few seconds to each thing. They're running around looking at everything. And then as they get older, they're able to attend to things for longer and longer periods of time. Research that's cited ability to sustain attention at 5 years old was linked to higher school level achievement at 9 years old. And this continues to improve throughout adolescence. Selective attention also starts to increase. At age 6, children begin to pay more attention to features of a relevant task. They start to direct their attention towards things and they become less impulsive, right? They're able to listen to directions of things. How to do this, when a particular activity, they're able to engage in it better because they're able to focus on it and they're able to listen to the instructions. Increase in cognitive control of attention continues to increase. And divided attention, better at 12 years old than at 8 years old. So for example, like at 8 years old and, the teacher's talking and the classroom's maybe a little bit noisy and distracting, they're less able to focus, they're less able to divide their attention. Okay, I need to go back 20 seconds without physically editing this video. And work on my selective attention. Let me correct myself. Selective attention, going up here, able to pay more attention to the features relevant on a task. Direct attention, less impulsive. That is correct what I said. Divided attention is the one where you're able to study and listen to music at the same time. Which clearly I can't do because it made me stumble. Anyways, so at age 8, not so much able to do this. They need to be able to focus on things, right? But by the age of 12, they're able to do that. They're able to focus on one thing while having noise in the background, like listen to the music and enjoy it and be studying at the same time. And that continues. The ability to do that does continue to increase because research was showing that it was markedly better at the age of 20. Getting students to pay attention. If you look on page 262, there's some strategies there that you can use in the classroom. For example, encourage attention and minimize distraction. So all of these sort of point to something that's very similar, right? So reading them separately sort of is implying that they're different things. What this is all about is you can do activities with your students that help teach them how to attend to things, right? And you see them doing this, like playing like a skill that they use in sports too, right? In order to teach athletes, like young athletes or whomever, to listen and to attend to information and selectively attend to important pieces of stimuli. They have different activities that they can do, right? And they make them games. You can do the same thing in the classroom, right? So encourage attention and minimize distraction. Make learning interesting. Use cues and gestures for important material. Focus on active learning and be aware of individual differences, and use media and technology to make learning more enjoyable. So combining ideas of all of those things, there are activities you could do in your classroom that make it fun and make it, you can explain the importance of learning to attend to things and just make it, the word I'm trying to look for was explicit. Okay, so for example, you can have exercises where they're working on something and let them know this, we're going to play an attention game, right? So when you hear 3 bells or 2 bells, ding ding, it means stop and move to the next one. And then the last person to go over, well, in sports you'd say has to do 10 push-ups, but you can't do that in your classroom. But or you'll see in other things where the teacher's standing at the front of the classroom, and in order to get students to be quiet, they touch their nose. And then when everyone sees and they attend to the teacher, everybody touches their nose, and that has them be quiet. Of course, you can always have the game where people, the first 10 students get points, because you want to reward that behavior, as opposed to the last 10 do push-ups, which is not rewarding positive behavior. All right. So we are at 21 minutes and we're about to get to memory. That's another major section. So I think I'm going to stop right here. So we've talked about the nature of information processing, how it's like your brain is like a computer, and attention and memory processing, all of these different parts is like the software. So we're going to be getting into more software down here in memory in the next video.